Lesson 11.3 is about geometric sequences. So we're really doing the same two objectives as before. So find a formula for the nth term and then find specific terms, but now for geometric formulas or sequences. So geometric sequence, the first term still refers to T1. The common ratio now is R. And then we can find a formula for the nth term with Tn equals T1 times R to the n minus 1. So in the first example, it says find a formula for the nth term of each geometric sequence, and then we'll find that specific 10th term in this case. So very similar process as before. We know our formula this time is Tn equals T1 times R to the n minus 1. So T1 is the first term, so in this case that's 500. And then R is that common ratio, which you would be multiplying by in between each term. So in this case, you're dividing by 5 each time, which means your common ratio is 1/5. Remember to always define R in terms of what you would be multiplying by. So then the formula is Tn equals 500 times 1/5 to the n minus 1. Remember, you cannot multiply the 500 and the 1/5. You'd have to follow order of operations, raise the 1/5 to the exponent before multiplying it by the 500. So when we find the 10th term, we'll do exactly that. So it's 500 times 1/5 to the 10 minus 1, or 1/5 to the 9th. So 1/5 to the 9th, and then we'll multiply that by 500. So if you put that in your calculator, you'll get this. Okay, same question, just a little bit more different format. It says find the specific term of the sequence. So it gives us the first couple, ... and then says find T10. So just like before, we're still finding the 10th term. So same steps apply. First, we want to come up with a formula for the nth term. So we know T1 is going to be 2. And we know our common ratio. In this case, we're multiplying by 3 between each terms. So we have Tn equals 2 times 3 to the n minus 1. But we're trying to find the 10th term. So we're going to do 2 times 3 to the 10 minus 1, or 2 times 3 to the 9th, which is 39,366. Okay, example 3 says insert the given number of geometric means between the pairs of numbers. So we want 3 geometric means, so 1, 2, 3, between 5 and 80. So this is going to be really similar to how we did this with arithmetic means. So that's T1, this is T5. We're trying to find T2, T3, T4. So we know Tn equals T1 R to the n minus 1. Let's use the two pieces of information we know. Let's plug in 80 for T5. So 80 when n is 5, and then T1 is 5. So that lets us solve for R. So that would be 80 equals 5 R to the 4th. We could divide by 5 and get 16. And then take the 4th root of both sides, which is the same as the 1/4 power. And we'll get that R is 2. And now we can just use that to fill in the rest here. We would just multiply each term by 2. So 5 times 2 is 10, and then 20, and then 40. And then if we multiply by 2 again, we'd get to 80. So we know we did it right. Example 4 says find the geometric mean of each pair of numbers. Okay, let's do that. So we have the geometric mean. So it's like saying find one geometric mean between the pair of numbers instead of 3 like we just did. So we could do this the same way. We could say, okay, this is T1, T2, T3. We know Tn equals T1, R to the n minus 1. And then plugging in that T3 is 9, we get 9. And that's T3, so 3 minus 1 up here. And we know T1 is 4. With all of that, we can solve for our R. So we would get 9/4 equals r squared. Take the square root and we'll get plus or minus 9/4 or plus or minus 3/2 equals r. And then if we multiply by 3/2, 4 times 3/2 will give us this middle term of 6. Now, there is a shortcut to this that you can memorize. Put it over here. So let's call these 4 and 9 A and B. You can memorize that the geometric mean will always be the square root of A times B if A, B are positive. In this case, they were. And then negative the square root of AB if A, B are negative. So that's also why I use just the positive version of R. This is a shortcut that you can memorize instead of having to do all of these steps each time. Kind of like how there was a shortcut to just finding one arithmetic mean. It was the same as the average. Okay, example 5, find the first term of the sequence. Okay, so we're trying to find T1. We know T2 and we know T3. Another thing that we can do is we can see that the r between the terms, to get from 18 to 12, we had to multiply by 2/3. So let's use what we know. So the formula is Tn equals T1 r to the n minus 1. So let's plug in one of the pieces of information we know. So either T2 or T3. Let's take T2. So when T2 is 18, when n is 2, okay, and then we know that our r is 2/3. Now the only thing we don't have is our T1. So this becomes 18 equals T1 times 2/3. So to get T1 by itself, I just multiply on both sides by 3/2. So that cancels. And then 18 times 3/2 gives us our first term of 27. That's lesson 11.3. Go ahead and try the homework on Schoology.